I don't think there are a ton of people who remember him here, which is just kind of a sad thing to find out in a documentary where I'm trying to find out, the impact that the college had on him or that he had on the college, and it seems like not a ton. A lot of interviews will say, so then you went on to the Dayton Art Institute from, your time in the Marines. And he's like, well, actually, I went to Kenyon College first. But that's about the mention that gets.
God bless you. The essays were the worst. The blue book of the essays. I never, well, now you're talking about college with the blue book. I was in college just about an hour. First of all, they paddled me. I wasn't used to that. I'd come out of 3 years in the Marines, and a guy said, assume the angle. And I said, what angle are we talking about? We're back to geometry again.
So what was his connection to Kenyon?
He went here in 1946 for about 4.5 months, and then he came back in 1980 to get an honorary doctorate.
I grabbed the ankles. How many times? In those days, we're really in shape. Had the 32 waist, and we didn't have steroids in those days. We picked each other up. If you could find an attractive man, with well-built, without going too far, building, the arms automatically grow.
So what is your connection to Kenyon?
I am also a matriculate of Kenyon. Will be graduating soon.
No, the guy spanked me or paddled me, and I had to repeat all the chapters, and apparently a lot of chapters in the deep, and that was it, huh? Well, that was it for him. Yeah.
The relationship we have with Robin Williams is really cool because they're both just huge pioneers in American comedy, and I think it would be cool to eventually research that aspect, and so I was just doing research about him here to see if there's anything about his time at Kenyon that influenced his comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Often say to yourself, why do all horror pictures start the same way? It's never a clear night. Never. It's always a rainy night, bolt of lightning, and some poor devil in the 36 Chevy is stalled on a muddy road.
This is about Jonathan Winters. It's about his time at Kenyon. It's about anything that I can find in 2019 of his time in 1946 and 1980 that he was on the Hill in Gambier. I don't think I'm going to find anything spectacular.
And on top of that, the bridge is out. He can't get to a motel or a hotel. He sort of makes his way up through some bushes and stuff, up to this filthy castle, which is just covered with poison ivy. And that's where our warm scene opens. Evidence of things that I want to prove, which is pretty biased. Just also anything that seems important to a story I'm trying to tell, or a story that I would want to tell, or a story that I would want to know more about. Pictures of what Kenyon was like in 1946, answers, documents from the Honors Day ceremony, and questions, artifacts, cool photos, or strange documents or things like that. History and people's lived experience. Also just regular documents like from the registrar's office that prove that he went here. Archives are giant, beautiful houses of information and treasure troves of things that you can touch and feel, and you can be like, this happened and I'm holding evidence of it, and it's so cool. I think it's probably just to understand. Well, this sounds super simple, but understanding things we don't understand. Maybe that is just the whole simple answer. Mainly just looking for things that grab my attention, or that I think are cool things that other people might want to know.
What kind of information have you found?
A lot of anecdotal information, really small specific things that I find a lot of importance in that probably other people might not. But maybe if you do that, that's really great, because I think that's where inspiration comes from interviews and, both, paper interviews that I found in the archive, talking to people, and which I guess you're not really going to see in this documentary, but I have talked to people for this. And there's also a WKCO interview, which is pretty cool. It's just him pretending to be a political candidate and talking to students.
Senator, not being from Ohio,
Yes.
I hate to offend you, but I really have not heard of you before. Could you give us a little bit about your background?
Well, you see, we have something in common. I haven't heard of you. Now, number 5. Sound good so far, don't it? I want to drop the speed limit to 2.5 miles an hour. I love to see people go crazy. Smile at everybody. As far south as Atlanta. And I want people to understand I do not want a war. I want to stay out of it if it's possible. And if we do have one, let's win.
Seeing the things that, or hearing about, or whatever, the things that he went through, and then relating my own experience to that, and then seeing what he could do with that, and how many people he could affect. It's like, wow, that's really important. So that, just knowing that the potential of someone to do something to help other people, like, I feel like that's why. More generally, though, like, information, inspiration, yeah.
My mother turned to me one time and she said, maybe I've mentioned this on the air before, and if I have, why, raise your hands. But she said, would you like to be an intellectual? And I always wanted to be, because I was very slow. I was labeled dumb in number classes. So coming out of the war and everything, I thought, geez, it would be fun to be an intellectual, at least to take a crack at it.
So what was Kenyon like in 1946?
Very different from how it is in 2019. It was all male, and there were a lot more students suddenly, because it was the end of World War II, and a lot of men either came back to Kenyon or entered Kenyon. And fraternity seemed to be a very big thing, and that was kind of both a social and an economic division among students. And
I think often about just possible encounters that I could have had, or just walking by and having conversations about, like, history or poetry or art, or, probably girls.
And so then why did he leave?
Mainly because there weren't any girls at Kenyon, which I get, and that
I was heavy in the sauce those days, like many people. It seemed like many people, because I thought everybody was bombed around me. I thought everybody was bombed in the service, and many were. But I was having a great party. I had emerged as not a victor or anything, or a hero, but I'd survived, if nothing else. So I continued to party.
I think there was a history professor who kind of encouraged him to pursue art, because he was going to be a political cartoonist.
And dropped out again because of my studies. I was a problem student, obviously. But I did want to be an artist. I went to the Dayton Art Institute, a fine little school in Dayton. Not like that. My wife went to Sarasota and also to Colorado Springs. She got her master's degree at Ohio State.
But you met her at Dayton?
Yes, I met her in Dayton. She's a Dayton gal. This is called a kitty who isn't paying attention.
But just knowing why you're doing something and what you want to do, I think that's important. And he knew that this was not where he wanted to be, so he left. And that's pretty much the story.
But I must tell you that yesterday morning I got a call from the president, and I talked like a fool, sir, and yes, sir, and yes, sir. And it wasn't the president at all. It was this nut who called me.
Comedy is important because you can talk about almost anything with comedy, especially serious subjects that are hard to approach, but much easier to approach if there's an element of comedy in it. It's kind of like that distance that's necessary to tackle really difficult things. And also it's super entertaining, I think. It's a great way to think about the world. Yeah, this really cool RSVP card where he talked about what he would need, what he would do, and what he wouldn't do, and what his wife wouldn't do. Which relates to a myth about riding a bicycle down Middle Path nude. Yeah. So Jeff Robinson and Jonathan Winters were both Deke pledges in 1946, and they both lived in the West Wing of Old K and remained friends through the whole time. So he was his host here, and he did a lot of things. He gave interviews on WKCO for the Collegian, and he went to a baseball game. He conducted an art class, a drama class. He actually conducted an art class here in Bexley, and then bought some student art because he was a huge fan of art. There's a cool picture of him posing with some students whose art he bought. And yeah, he gave some remarks at the Honors Day ceremony.
CBS.
Somebody's described what you do in performance as a kind of verbal painting, and that you are, I suppose, holding up a mirror to our foibles and our hypocrisies and so forth. So in a sense, funny as it is, and it is terribly funny,
Sure.
there can be a kind of message.
Oh, yes. Oh, sure.
I think fantasy gives you that distance and ability to explore reality in a way that you can understand it better.
This is the greatest movie camera in the world. Better than any Nikon, Zeiss, Kodak, what have you. This is the greatest sound equipment in the world. All of us are listening basically when we're in the room, the streets, what have you, in the meadows, to the same sounds. And we're taking the same pictures as we pan around. The thing being, you're the editor, and it's how often you go to your darkroom to develop what you've seen.
Just how he used what he observed about the world around him and also what he thought about himself to overcome different struggles. Like, he had a very difficult childhood. Grew up in the Depression and also in a family where he didn't get a lot of love or attention, it seemed, speaking as if I know him, but just according to interviews and things he's written and such.
Did you have a relatively happy childhood? I had an unusual childhood. It was always, are you here again? What is it? What is it now? Well, I just came in for some love.
And he struggled a lot with mental illness, and he was incredibly open about that at a time when no one was really open about that. You know, he would go on Jack Parr show or Carson or something and talk about the time that he was spent in an institution or make like offhand remarks to that.
All the world was a stage also. All the men were in heavy white with a red cross on their arm. Don't do that no more. God, it just seemed months after. How are we doing today? What do you mean, how are we doing? I want to get out of here, man. Well, you will when you get well. I'm well now. Can't you tell I'm well? I feel great.
Just sharing his experience, I think, and also using that in a way to create something that was really beautiful.
Here's a religious bird standing on a religious turtle.
For some reason, I find it really powerful to step where my heroes have stepped. And so I feel like by believing that in some way is like we share this place, so there's something else that we share that's fundamental to who we are, or at least like some very small fundamental part of who we are. So I think that when you do share a place, maybe there are certain values or worldviews or just ideas that are developed in a certain place that are tied to that place. And if two people have lived in a certain place, then you share that, you know, the same way that people like to share where they lived on campus. Because it's like, oh, I lived in that dorm, I know what that's like.
I was never in a war. It was unfortunate. I couldn't go. I had double murmur in the mind or something. And my décolle, mon saccaway shit encendu, which is mind murmuring.
I hope I didn't see what I saw. A little man, 6 inches long. Face, hair, those tiny teeth. Feet. How many of these little men do you have, Doctor? Over 18,000. I've got them all there in that file cabinet.
And many's the time, people say, where were we? I knew we were in the Pacific. You were in the Marines. Yes. You became a general.
No, Colonel.
Don't really?
Just a colonel.
That's as good as a general.
All right.
Must be very proud of that.
Thank you.
Did you strafe a lot of workers in the field?
Johnny Winters? Oh, yes, the king.
A good time. Remember, Dad?
Just the fact that you'd come over here with... Dad, did you sign those papers? Did you sign the papers?
Okay, why is he wearing a Yankee uniform?
Because I'm a Yankee.
Oh, hell.
We're going to go through Chickamauga twice. People are going to have to get it right this time, honey.
He was wandering around the lot yesterday in a Union cavalry officer's outfit. And you see people wandering around going, there's studio executives going, good God, what's that? He's going, you men, stay over there. Keep wearing the Gucci suits. We'll put you in the front line.
And I tried to get Congress to go along with me. My friends, Lyndon, who I saw about a year ago.
We're going now. We're going to go over to the Quail's house.
I'd rather die here.